Hello and welcome to Great Lakes in Depth. I'm Ric Mixter, and today we have several great adventures to take you on. First, we'll travel to Upper Michigan to try and uncover the mystery of a 100-year-old schooner that has yet to be positively identified. Then we'll hop aboard the Appledore. It's a school ship designed to teach students about our incredible water resources. We'll also get a closer look at one of the creatures the kids will be studying. It's a zebra mussel, and it's our creature close-up of the week. All that and a dive at Wisconsin's Death's Door on this edition of Great Lakes in Depth. We'll be right back.
Great Lakes in Depth is brought to you by Viking, the professional diver's choice for staying warm in the Great Lakes. Countless military and law enforcement dive teams count on Viking in extreme conditions. Shouldn't you? Also by International Software Engineers, creators of the Edmund Fitzgerald Interactive CD-ROM, the first and only source for everything you need to know about the Great Lakes' largest shipwreck. And by Jay's Sporting Goods, outfitting you and your family for the outdoors for over 30 years. Trust in the tradition. Jay's Sporting Goods.
Divers who venture into the shallower waters of the Great Lakes realize that most of the wrecks are chunks of metal and broken pieces of wood. But there are those ships that defy Mother Nature's icy grip.
This is all Grand Island here behind me, and it's owned by the Forest Service now, and they're doing they're going to turn it into a national recreation area. It's quite a deserted island. There's only a little 10-acre parcel here that has homes on it, or I should say summer cottages. And then the other part of the island where we're going is Murray's Bay, and there's some old homes from when the original white settlers came into the area and settled the area. I think it was about 1837 or so.
Visitors to this side of Grand Island are usually divers who brave Lake Superior's cold temperatures to see the Murray Bay wreck. The title isn't quite as grand as what should grace the nameboard of such a fine schooner, especially in the condition that this wooden wreck is in.
The canal schooners are unique vessels. They were designed to go through the Welland Canal between Lakes Erie and Ontario. And I think those original lock systems were 150 feet by 30 feet, so these vessels just fit in there. And they were designed as a bulk style carrier. There were two-masted schooner with that raisable centerboard, and we saw a lot of the fish life today was along that centerboard trunk. And they were hiding inside the center, or where the centerboard is. And that was a raisable centerboard so that the vessel, when it was going through the lock system and also when it came into shallow water ports, would raise up the centerboard, and that would allow her to get into shallow water,
145 feet long, this wreck lies in only 30 feet of water. It's so shallow and clear that glass-bottomed tour boats can glide over and see the wreck without ever getting wet. This is the ultimate first shipwreck dive for beginners, since it allows for incredible bottom time and even a peek beneath the decks. And this is a photographer's dream when it comes to wildlife. Researchers have claimed this ship is the Arnold, Bermuda, Dreadnought, or the Grenada. What is known is that it was a two-masted canal schooner hauling iron ore chunks.
She sailed into Munising Harbor under her own power out of a storm, and she was coming out of Marquette and going down to Detroit with a load of hard iron ore. And this particular vessel has hard iron ore, so that fits in the story. But the problem is that the Bermuda was a sailor, and this particular vessel, I believe, was cut down to a schooner barge because she doesn't have a bowsprit. And there's a nice piece of metal that goes over her bow and goes right down the stem of the vessel that tells me that when the vessel sank, she didn't have a bowsprit. And the bowsprit was kind of they needed, these canal schooners needed a bowsprit in order to sail comfortably.
It's believed the ship was towed here intentionally to make repairs after the ship began leaking. It gradually sank to the bottom, and at least 2 attempts were made to raise it.
A Canadian company came over to salvage the vessel, and they picked it off the bottom and towed it underwater over to here, and they dropped it prior to getting to where they were wanting to go, and they left it for us, you know. So we have a totally intact canal schooner here. It's one of the most intact ones you'll ever see at this kind of a depth. It's only 12 feet to the deck, 30 feet to the bottom, and totally intact. You know, you can go right inside of it.
A good way to get an idea of this wreck's size is by dropping down the rudder and looking towards the surface. Thermoclines in Lake Superior can often be visible, and you'll at least feel the temperature change as you reach the bottom. A good wetsuit will keep an active diver warm, but a dry suit is recommended for extended stays. Rock bass now make this ship home, as do countless sculpin. These tiny fish seem like chameleons, blending into the sand and woodwork with their strange coloration. Sculpins feed on aquatic animals and are favorite foods of trout and burbot. Slow down and study areas for hiding places of sculpins. You'll find them in the strangest places. Measurements and countless hours of research have yet to positively identify the wreck. Some say it's one of the oldest schooners left on the Great Lakes. The Murray Bay wreck is certainly one of the most intact shipwrecks on the Great Lakes, making the Alger Underwater Preserve a must visit. Most of what students learn about the Great Lakes comes out of a textbook, and while that's okay, there's nothing quite like being out there and doing it firsthand. That's the mission of a new organization in Michigan. They're called Baysail.
Welcome to the Appledore. We're going to have a great time today. Have you all ever been out on a boat like this before?
No. That's a common answer when the captain asks students if they've ever sailed before. These kids may live near one of the largest Great Lakes, but few have really experienced the lakes like this.
Okay, so we're going to go right around that way, okay?
Okay. Learning to pilot a schooner is only part of the lesson, as the students maintain course down the river to open water. This is the destination of Appledore, the shallow waters of Saginaw Bay. It's here that the kids will get a closer look at the ecosystem. Collecting a bottom sample is the first lesson.
It's open when it goes down, it hits the bottom of the lake, and it clamps shut and grabs some of the sediment. Hopefully it's going to happen on the first trip down. We're going to pull the sediment up, put it in the green bowl right here, and we're going to find all kinds, hopefully, of living organisms in there. Okay, I'm going to scoop some of this out and go through.
Hidden within the sand and muck are tiny creatures like midge larvae, which can be seen with just a simple magnifying glass.
Can you see it?
Yeah. No, I can't.
Okay, let's get it up here.
Okay, let's check this out.
Plankton nets capture tiny plants and animals, a microscopic meal for small fish that are eventually consumed by larger predators. This area is considered one of the world's best walleye and perch fisheries.
I see them.
Can you see anything?
The kids see plenty, and this activity station is one of the most popular, as kids learn how important even the tiniest creature is to the ecosystem.
I enjoyed learning about the zooplankton and the phytoplankton. My favorite out of the plankton was the zooplankton because it was like the animals. It's kind of fun watching the little things move around.
Getting the kids excited about science is what this ship is all about.
We have a tremendous population of students here, many of whom are not exposed necessarily to the Great Lakes, other than perhaps standing on the shoreline or visiting a local state park beach. So the opportunity to get them out on a tall ship into the middle of the environment, into the middle of the resource, is really an awesome experience for them, and a way to get them to really understand and appreciate appreciate the resource we have here.
And we want to get just this water at 4 meters of depth. So what this does is the ends open up and then they close and trap the water in there at 4 meters depth.
Water samples are collected at different layers within the water column. Then they're tested for chemical content and temperature.
If you want to go ahead and hold that, we're going to get the temperature of that water. And let me know when that red line stops moving. Did it stop moving?
No, it's going up.
It's going up? I don't think we want it to go back up.
Students also get a lesson in basic seamanship as the Appledore takes advantage of some easterly winds. The engine goes off and the schooner glides across Saginaw Bay.
Just give it a couple tugs. Just don't undo it. Just give it a couple of tugs.
It's tough work as the kids help to stow the sails as their voyage draws to a close. It's a field trip that won't be forgotten.
Because we're on a boat near the water, and heck, I hardly ever get on a boat near the water. Every once in a while, you know, but not something you just do every day.
The trip is just as exciting for the crew, who venture out at least twice a day. The captain says it's his younger passengers who make his job worthwhile.
They're just full of wonderment and excitement, and
Christy, give it some slack and then kick it.
they leave here with just so much.
There's nothing like a sail on the Great Lakes. Bay Sail was initially set up by grants from the Dow Chemical Company and General Motors Powertrain. These little critters caused quite a stir when they were accidentally introduced into the Great Lakes during the late 1980s. They quickly clogged a lot of water lines, and they became the most infamous newcomer to the Great Lakes.
The zebra mussel gets its name from its distinctive zebra-like stripes. And, unfortunately, this mussel grows in colonies, which become massive over time. Scientists call this biofouling, and it means clogged water pipes and coatings on underwater objects like shipwrecks. Navigational buoys have been pulled underwater by the weight of mussels below the surface. Zebra mussels took America by storm, first discovered in Lake St. Clair and then in all the Great Lakes by 1990. Like a virus in the bloodstream, zebra mussels drifted into the rivers and are now found as far south as Arkansas and Mississippi. Each mollusk can lay up to 1 million eggs during spawning, and larvae are mobile until they find a place to attach to. Researchers are still investigating the total impact of zebra mussels, which prefer to collect on native clams instead of rocks. This eventually kills the clam, and scientists fear extinction in many species. It's believed the creatures are eaten by gobies and yellow perch, and their contribution to cleaner water is due to their appetite for algae. They filter nearly 1 liter of water every day, and the cleaner water is now growing new plants and providing food and habitat for fish.
We're certainly enjoying cleaner water thanks to the zebra mussels, but unfortunately, they're covering nearly every premier wreck that we have. Lake Superior's icy temperatures seem to be keeping the mussels at bay. Now, let's go knocking at death's door in Wisconsin.
Port de Mort. The English translation is Death's Door, an ominous name that needs little explanation. It was these fog-covered waters that have snagged ships and stolen lives since the first day that man tried to navigate across them.
It was an Indian tradition, as I understand it, that one tribe was sending a group of canoes across to invade the Indians that lived on Washington Island at that time, and a storm came up and sank all the canoes, and they all died. And so the Indians gave it this name in their language. Then when the French came, they heard about this through the Indians, and they called it Port de Mort, as I said. And then later, when the English-speaking people came, they titled it Death's Door.
Death's Door was one of the first areas hit when the storm of the century devastated the Great Lakes. 70-mile-an-hour winds raged over Green Bay, and even Washington Island's harbor couldn't protect those who managed to make it in. The Louisiana was returning from Milwaukee after unloading a coal cargo from Ohio. Bound for Michigan, the Louisiana would only make it part way up Lake Michigan. The great storm of 1913 pushed her ashore in a blinding snow squall. 17 crew members were going to wait the storm out, but a fire started between the decks, possibly started by the engines or a tip stove. The wooden vessel couldn't be extinguished, and the crew took their chances going ashore. The ship burned to the waterline, and the crew waded through 5 miles of snowdrifts to find shelter. They would soon have company, as a small barge fetched up on the beach nearby. The crew of the Halstead would also be saved, but Death's Door wouldn't be cheated. It swallowed up another schooner just north and east of the island. The Plymouth and its 7-man crew disappeared near Gull Island. Over a dozen steel ships and 240 sailors were also lost before the gale of 1913 was through. Today, there is little left of the Louisiana. Battered by 8 decades of storms and ice, the wooden steamer was reduced to sections of boards and large spikes. Divers investigating the wreck will find hundreds of artifacts, clues to how the ship was constructed. Launched in 1887, this Michigan-built ship is a great example of early steamship design, but it will take some imagination to put this broken puzzle back together. Broken machinery also marks the site where a proud 267-foot steamship put her crew ashore. Once a proud hauler of stone, coal, and commodities, the Louisiana is now only a playground for wildlife and for the occasional diver who slips beneath the waves. Hidden by only inches of water, the Louisiana would probably be forgotten, if not for the section of bow that was cast upon the shore, a rare grave marker for one of the casualties of the King of Storms.
The Louisiana is one of only a few of the 1913 ships that have been found. 6 giant steel freighters are still missing. True testament to our mysterious Great Lakes.
Five of the steel giants lost in the Great Storm have been located. All are upside down and only 2 are within sport diving limits, that is less than 130 feet deep. The Charles S. Price, located near Port Huron, Michigan, was originally found floating upside down just after the storm. The Price was found to be too damaged for recovery and was left to settle to the bottom. The Price is located on the southern end of Lake Huron, and visibility is usually poor. Penetration is possible, but the deteriorating wreck is extremely hazardous. Only a few miles north of the Price lies another 1913 storm victim. The Regina disappeared with all of its crew, and the ship wouldn't be found until the mid-1980s. Now the crown jewel of the Sanilac Underwater Preserve, the Regina hosts countless divers who can still find artifacts in the shifting sands. Each piece of the wreck is protected by federal law, and you'll find charter boat captains and the DNR to be very protective of what's left. Loaded with everything from champagne to fencing, the Regina could take several dives to fully explore. Many believe that the 1913 storm was the worst storm of our century, and these underwater hulks are stark reminders of how cruel the lakes can be.
Divers may argue over what is the biggest advancement in dive gear technology over the past decades, but most would agree that electronic downsizing is near the top of the list. We can now wear dive computers right on our wrist, and the gear to take underwater pictures keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
This vehicle was more than Jacques Cousteau's first submersible. The Soucoupe, or Flying Saucer, was, for many of us, our first look at the undersea world. Cousteau, who helped design the sub and the Aqualung, also led development of the underwater camera, but it wouldn't be until 30 years later that housings would be affordable for most divers. We now shoot videotape instead of film in our cameras, and unlike the early days, we'll run out of air before we'll use up our raw footage. VHS-C and Hi8 cameras now are the preferred method of underwater videography, their small size allowing for small housings. Small size is not only great for maneuvering underwater, but it's also easier to carry on to the airlines, reducing the chance of breakage or theft during a dive trip. Housings fit nearly all consumer cameras, and with newly designed seals, the possibility of flooding is greatly reduced. With a variety of sizes and functions, it's best to try before you buy. Many charters offer underwater rentals, and local scuba shops may even teach underwater video techniques. This is a good opportunity to try out different housings and camcorder combinations. Look for easy-to-close seals and low maintenance. Find out which tapes work best and practice, practice, practice. You'll be surprised at how much you miss during your dive if you're videotaping it. It's a trade-off since your first-hand experience is lessened, but you have moving images to remember what you did see for years to come. You'll find dive buddies are eager to share in your costs if you share the footage. Another benefit to video is that the urge to bring artifacts and wildlife to the surface is erased, since you now have pictures to share with even non-divers who can enjoy your adventure.
Technology is allowing us to share these underwater images in a variety of ways through CD-ROMs and videos. Even the internet is now providing access to people to see these underwater images without ever getting wet. Great Lakes In Depth will take you to these remote places. Here's a look at some of our upcoming shows.
Plunge into history as the Great Lakes In Depth team investigates the wreck of the Philadelphia. Lost in a collision in 1893, this wreck still has its cargo sitting on the deck. The Philadelphia still has many secrets to reveal. And we'll meet one of the new residents aboard the shipwreck, a lawyerfish. Find out how the burbot got this colorful name as we spotlight this ancient fish in our Creature Close-Up. All next week on Great Lakes In Depth.
Well, that about wraps it up for today's show. I'm Ric Mixter. Thanks for joining us on Great Lakes In Depth. We'll see you next time.